Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. Today we have a very special guest, my daughter, Nailah Garard, who is a local farmer and cultural anthropologist and land conservationist from Long Island. She recently received her Master's of Arts in Religion at Yale Divinity School and a Master's of Environmental Management at Yale School of Environment. She is the founder of Succotash Gardens, a community food resilience hub in her family's church land, Roosevelt, New York, where she teams up in developing food forest gardens and community-supported agriculture. So welcome, Nailah Garard.
Thank you so much.
So first, start us off with what led you to study anthropology and religion, and how do they coincide with each other?
I will start in 2020. That's when I started gardening, and as we all know, that was our global pandemic. The first wave of the global pandemic began in 2020. And so I was finishing out my work at Macaulay Honors College at City College of New York, where I did a dual major, really, in international studies and anthropology. And my thesis work was focusing on Black communities in the U.S. as they are trying to find homeland and belonging in the U.S., even with a history of feeling alienated in the U.S. And so as I was writing about homeland and what land means for Black communities in the U.S., I was also began gardening. And it was kind of a project that I did because I was looking to do something outside. I was looking to get outside. And at the same time, there was a lot of political, economic turmoil. A lot of people were struggling to access healthcare. A lot of people were struggling to access food. Remember all those food lines?
Yes.
And so as I began gardening, and I was introduced to gardening from my grandmother, who is the one that gardens in our family. So I was exposed to that kind of world, but I didn't realize the power of agriculture and growing food until I was able to start and see how seeds can transform into plants, watermelon and corn and tomatoes and herbs and all these things that we need to eat.
To sustain life.
To sustain life.
Yeah.
So I thought it was very powerful to be able to have access to free, affordable, nutritional foods. And so it was very humbling and changed my trajectory. I was on my way to law school, and then I ended up applying for this religion and ecology degree at Yale, starting at Yale Divinity School, where my focus was Black African diasporic religion, specifically eco-womanism, which really centers the voices of Black and Indigenous women and their faith that is connected to their earth justice work, and also kind of transitioning into the Yale School of Environment, where I focus on agroforestry. And so really the connection is an ethic of recognizing Black and Indigenous traditions that see the earth and relate to the earth as a living thing, as a thing to respect and to listen to and to care for as the earth cares for us.
That's awesome. So can you describe environmental health? What is that, and what does it mean to you?
Sure. So I think of environmental health as critical to and reflective of our mental, physical, and emotional well-being. Within biomedicine, we tend to have a focus on the individual diagnostics, but environmental health really encourages us to see the collective health and well-being, and how our health is integrated within our ecosystems and our environment. So it's really that connection between nature and our survival. And some aspects of environmental health include access to clean, safe drinking water, access to clean air, access to affordable, healthy foods, good access to infrastructure that might look like transportation, that looks like food apartheid in certain communities, which is where communities don't have access to good food. It looks like when we are experiencing climate change, certain communities have higher risk to heat waves or climate disasters. So our environmental health kind of encompasses all those things.
So when you talk about food apartheid, tell me, what is that? Can you define that? What is that?
Sure. So food apartheid is kind of the political language that is coming out of Karen Washington. She's a food organizer in the Bronx, and she also has a farm upstate New York, Rise and Root Farm. She began saying this term as a alternative term to the term food desert. A food desert is an area in which a community does not have access to grocery stores or healthy grocery stores within a mile radius of where they're located, or it's just difficult for them to get to these healthy food sites. Instead, they might have more access to things like corner stores, liquor stores, bodegas. They'll have access to foods that are considered toxic, and these are considered food swamps because the swampiness of it is talking about like the danger of eating these foods.
And they include the processed foods.
Yes.
The packaged foods.
Yes.
So the lack of produce and locally grown produce is what you really are focusing on, and what you see as a lack in these food, quote unquote, apartheid areas.
These areas do not have access to farmers markets. And usually if there is a farmers market, it's out of town and it's expensive to buy from. Yeah, there's just so much chemicals, so many toxic chemicals in the fast foods that we know and love.
That's true. So what is the connection between environmental justice and health? How does the two tie?
Environmental health is very political. It's connected to how Black and Brown communities face unequal distributions of toxins and waste disposals in their communities. It also looks at historical land dispossession, especially in the form of land loss, when we're talking about Black farmers who have lost millions of acres of land because of USDA discrimination. But as Black people have migrated or been pushed out into industrialized urban areas, we're experiencing things like gentrification and redlining. And so in our communities, we often see elevated heat without tree cover. We see lack of safety. We see absence of vegetation, increased noise, and climate disaster risks. So, and also, as we've mentioned, food apartheid. And so in a lot of my work, I've been living in communities like New Haven and the Bronx and, of course, Long Island. And it's just a pattern within U.S. cities that there's just a stark racial wealth difference. And along with these racial wealth lines, there are emergences of environmental health differentials between these two communities.
And is this something that is measurable? Have we seen this in the literature and in the research that these disparities? Is that something that you've read and studied?
Absolutely. I've studied under Dorceta Taylor, and her book Toxic Communities is a great read for people who are looking to understand the data behind environmental health disparities in Black and Brown communities.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and today we're talking to a very intelligent young lady. Happens to be my daughter, Nailah Garard, local farmer, cultural anthropologist, and land conservationist from Long Island. She recently received her Master's of Arts in Religion at Yale Divinity School and a Master's of Environmental Management at Yale School of Environment. She is the founder of Succotash Gardens, a community food resilience hub on her family's church property in Roosevelt, where she has a team developing food forest gardens and community-supported agriculture. So, Nailah, this is very interesting that you have been able to share some of what you have seen and studied. What is some of the benefits of growing food or connecting with the environment? I know that you have been very involved hands-on with churches and how they use their land for gardens.
Yeah.
What is the connection? And why are you so passionate about this?
I'll start with myself. When I began growing food at my home, it really was transformative for me in terms of my mental health. There is also studies when we put our hands in soil, there is bacteria in the soil that directly affects the serotonin in our brain. So it works as an antidepressant. But we feel this when we go outside, when we put our hands in soil, when we listen to birds.
Is that why I feel the way I do when I pull up weeds in the garden?
Absolutely. This is like a nature's therapy.
Okay.
There's a lot of ways that we can heal ourselves.
That was a joke, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Weeding is not the most fun. It can get really tiring, but you'll get some arm strength as you're doing it. So there are so many health benefits in connection with the environment. And to your question of why Black churches, I think that Black churches have been historically communally owned, a way of securing land ownership for Black communities as a collective land ownership. And there's a different kind of security that comes with church land than private owned land in our history. So for that reason, a lot of our access to land in Black communities are at our churches. And it's kind of an untapped resource in terms of thinking about this land as a way to advance food sovereignty for Black communities. So if we actually took the chance to grow food on this land instead of thinking of it as a site of just transition and passing it on to the next generation of leaders and clergy and members that will lead the church, but thinking in the long term of how can I develop this land and restore the land for multiple generations to come. I think it's a passion of mine because of the history of land loss for Black communities in this country. To try to give the church a different angle on how to develop relationships with their community and also kind of politically advance justice in their communities. Mm-hmm.
Would you say that when you are pushing forward these, I would say gardens, is that the appropriate term to use in our church?
Yes.
Properties. Would you say that this is an impetus for even improving the health of the community in general?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. As people can grow food on their land, they will have access to the foods that are locally sourced foods and fresh foods, organic foods, mm-hmm. foods that are not highly processed, foods that are not necessarily pest resistant, but this is all good because it increases the biodiversity of the food. Mm-hmm. And so when we have a diverse selection of food, that's really good for our gut, digestive health, mm-hmm. And then also, as the community is growing food, there's a lot of people in the community who hold histories, Black heritages of farming that has been lost over generations as people have, again, lost access to the land. So my grandmother her family harks from North Carolina. There's a deep heritage of growing food in North Carolina. On my father's side, my ancestors are from Georgia, and as well, there's a deep history of farming there. So as we've come north and migrated north and kind of been separated from those legacies of growing food, there's ways that we can begin to kind of uncover them in our elders. And so if we actually listen to our elders, ask questions, and give energy, the young people giving energy and space for the elders to share and to continue this tradition of growing food, there's a lot that we can learn.
Yeah. Do you see growing food as a medicinal way to reconnect? I know generations back we used to hear the tales of, just go in the back and just pull this or pull that to cure or to take care of different type of ailments.
Right.
Can you tell me some of your favorites? I would say plants that you see serve as a medicinal.
Sure. So
I guess that you would want to see in your garden as well.
Yes. And I think that I would love to start by talking about some wild plants that we see often, and we may not understand them as medicinal, but they serve a lot of medicinal purposes. So, like, for example, the first one that's coming to mind is dandelion root. We see dandelions everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Always trying to pull them up.
We see dandelions everywhere.
Yeah.
And the root is really good for you. It helps with detoxifying your blood. It's a good medicine. You can also use red clover. Red clover is everywhere. Red clover is good for your heart health. As an older farmer was telling me, he always is pulling up red clover, and it has a sweetness to it. So whenever I see it in the early spring, I'm always popping it. I would say mint. Mint grows voraciously, and it has like this underground kind of root system that just rhizome that takes over your yard. So once you plant mint, it's really easy for the mint to grow successfully. And mint is good for so many different reasons. It's good for your nervous system. It's good for your respiratory health. It's good for your body.
What about chocolate mint?
Chocolate mint is delicious.
Yeah.
It has a really good flavor and smell. And so for the aromatic therapy also, mint is really good. One of my personal favorites is catnip. And a lot of people use catnip for their pets, for their cats, because cats, it has this chemical called naltrexone that attracts felines. And so cats really act crazy when they get next to catnip because it just have that, they have a chemical attraction to it. But for humans, it's a sedative. So within many cultures, people will use it to help them go to sleep or relax. And similar with chamomile. Chamomile is also really easy to grow.
Right.
And that is a plant that's a perennial, so it comes back every year. Mugwort is another one that I love. It's a very voracious plant. It grows everywhere. And mugwort can be used, especially when they're young, could be used for reproductive health for women. Wow. It helps with blood flow. You can take a bath with it. You can make a tea with it. And if you make a tea with it, you might also have lucid dreaming. Wow. A lot of people use it to help, understand what's going on in their dream world. So it's really interesting. But there's a ton of mushrooms.
What about ginger?
Ginger is really powerful. I use it
good for nausea.
For nausea.
Yeah.
Especially on the cycle.
Yeah.
For immune boosting. Mm-hmm. Ginger is used for so many things.
I know garlic is one thing that we use a lot. I use a lot in cooking. But it's something, how does that grow? It's more of an underground kind of.
Yes.
Would that be considered a vegetable or?
Yes. So garlic is interesting because it is propagated from a bulbous root. So they also produce seeds, but really no one uses the seeds. People usually grow garlic from one of the cloves in the root, in the bulb. So yeah, it can grow, and you usually plant it in around October. But in terms of medicinal purposes, I always hear stories of elders using garlic every day and really just eating the clove.
Yes.
You can use the clove for immune boosting, it has like anti-inflammatory properties. There's research that garlic, if it is kind of like used as a tincture in water, it has more antibacterial properties than a mouthwash. So people will use that instead of mouthwash because garlic is
But
healthier.
then you can't talk to anyone.
Yeah, no. You have bad
very
breath.
garlic breath. but it is doing the job. So right, you pop some peppermint after you have your mouth washed with garlic.
Exactly. That's why you need a full garden.
That's right. You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and today you're learning about my daughter, Nailah Garard, a local farmer, cultural anthropologist, and land conservationist from Long Island. She recently received her Master's of Arts in Religion at Yale Divinity School and a Master's of Environment Management at Yale School of Environment. She is the founder of Succotash Gardens, a community food resilience hub on her family's church property in Roosevelt, where her team is developing a food garden and a community-supported agriculture area. So when we talk about this area that you are developing, Nailah, how are you going to encourage people to come and to join? Is it voluntary? How do you encourage people? Do you find that these food gardens are a place for exchange socially, connection? Do you find that people enjoy doing something like this? What has been your experience? Because I know you've worked with other community gardens besides this one.
Yes. So I've worked with a couple community gardens. The last community garden I've worked as a manager at Yale Divinity Farm. It was a beautiful farm, half acre, pretty small, manageable for the students, and it was completely student and community led. So as people come and gather in the community garden, there's a lot of things that we can do. We can have basic gardening workshops, Gardening 101. People can gather and do different earth rituals. People can gather and learn from each other's cultures of growing food. People can have community dinners. People can have... One of the things that I enjoyed doing as a manager at the farm was leading people on plant walks through the farm to kind of give a tour or introduction to a garden space like that. So that would look like, as people come for a tour, we're walking around the garden and we are smelling and touching and using our five senses to really engage the garden. So this is an embodied way of engaging a garden space rather than kind of the scientific, intellectual introduction to the garden where everything is prioritizing, like naming the plants and identifying things. And that's a part of it too, but I enjoy when people can access all their senses and really connect with a garden space and connect with plants. Because the reason is because their own knowledge of plants comes to the surface when certain plants trigger memories. Certain smells will remind them of their grandmother's cooking. So it's important for people to connect with it culturally as much as it is, I guess, ecologically.
And generationally, I would say.
And generationally.
I know that you were involved in one particular project that I was blessed, I would say, to go to see, and that's with the Stillwater Church. Mm-hmm. I was impressed because it was intergenerational kind of project that really included young people. Mm-hmm. And can you tell us about that and how you were able to engage the youth?
Yes. So Steel Meadow Community Fellowship, located in Baltimore, West Baltimore. It's an awesome church that is developing a peace park. So the peace park is 10 acres of forested land on their property. And this park is oriented for the community to have a place to walk, to play, to find a sense of peace and permanence in Baltimore. It was an amazing project to see how a blend of urban forestry and Black culture, all those things can come together. It was just the fusion for me of forestry and Black culture, because that's kind of what I study.
Yeah. How many acres was this that you had to manage?
10 acres.
10 acres. Wow.
10 acres.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a pretty sizable property. And the young people were coming from all parts of Baltimore, especially in West Baltimore, where there are issues of gun violence and safety and lack of access to green spaces. And if they did have access to green spaces, it often was discouraged for them to go because of the safety issues. So it was really beautiful for them to be exposed to a forestry program like this, where they could find safety and peace in a forest.
Yes, which is very needed in that kind of community. So I just want to wrap up right now and just thank you for sharing with us some of what you do, some of your passion, and some of how this relates to your family's health, because it's all really about health, whether it be spiritual, whether it be psychological, physiological, emotional, all connected to the earth and what we eat and how we exchange ourselves and what we take in our bodies. So thank you, Nailah, a local farmer, cultural anthropologist, and land conservationist from Long Island. She recently received her Master's of Arts in Religion at Yale Divinity and Master's of Environmental Management at Yale School of Environment. We want to thank you for this very important information, and we hope you continue to stay healthy, and thank you for being with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
This is your mother, Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. And we want to thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the nursing department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.